Hello and welcome back to Loose Linda number 2. So today I'm going to talk about how trans women have a place in women have a place in women's sports. And it's very important that we stay inclusive and let trans women be involved in sports, in any sports, even with other women. So about time. This has taken a few years and we've got there. USA powerlifting to allow trans athletes to compete with women after losing suits. And that's what we like to hear. Congratulations. A Minnesota state court has ruled that the USA powerlifting must permit transgender athletes to compete. And right they should. Otherwise, that's discrimination and not inclusive or equality in any shape or form. We absolutely want trans athletes competing against cis. That's what they are, cis. We've always had a problem with cis. Cis this, cis that. Cis at the top, trans at the bottom. Well, I tell you what, we're fed up with it. We don't want to be discriminated against anymore. Transgender powerlifter JC Cooper, a male who identifies as female, sued in a state court in 2021 after USA powerlifting's sex segregation policy barred him from competing against women. I don't know why they've put him. He's obviously a she. She's obviously a she. It's very confusing for most people, I know, but I mean, look at him, look at her. She looks beautiful. She's even got trans socks on. And pink and blue, two of my favourite colours. The court found that the organisation's policy violated state anti-discrimination law. Naughty! The harm is in making a person pretend to be something different. The implicit message being that who they are is less than. That is the very essence of separation and segregation. The district court's ruling compels USA powerlifting to cease and desist from unfair discriminatory practices and permits the body 2 weeks to comply. The order paves the way for individuals to compete in divisions based on their gender identity, not biological sex. I'll repeat that. Individuals to compete in divisions based on their gender identity. So if you want to identify as whatever you like, a horse in horse racing, and you want a little man on your back, that's lovely. Your choice. You want to do that? That's absolutely fine. And one day maybe you'll be at the Grand National and someone will put a bet on you. Because you might be 1,000 to 1, but you never know. All these other horses might start fucking each other, which is brilliant, because then you win the race. Gender identity, not biological sex. So, science in this case doesn't matter, because science only matters when we're being told what science is. And if you try and go against science, especially science that we see in the news or the government informs us, well, you're probably a fascist as well, aren't you? As well as a transphobe and a bigot. The funny thing is, most of these bigots and fascists will probably be at the Grand National betting on you. So you better not identify as a horse. You're probably better identifying as a snail. Because they do snail races. And a lot of us like to pretend we're snails. We move around slowly, feeling sorry for ourselves. But that's because people like to put us down. And you know who always wins the race? Not the rabbit or the hare, it's the snail. As we all know, we've all seen that, the rabbit and the snail. I do have to apologise, I do sound a bit stuffy. That's because I've probably got long COVID, because not many of you are vaccinated. And clearly, none of you are educated. So that's why I'm here, to educate you all, make sure you're vaccinated, and to stay motivated. Now, I'd like to watch one of my favourite trans women, Samantha Lux, who's got 629,000 subscribers on YouTube. Probably has millions and millions of people following her on TikTok. And by right, she should have that amount of following because she's a genius. She's very good at understanding what's happening now and what could happen in the future. And here's her reaction to South Park's transphobic episode. I do have to put out a warning, it's a trigger warning. If you get offended by bigots, racists, sexists, don't even like cartoons, look away now. Especially those with political satire, because not many of us understand what political satire is, but what it really means is discrimination. And nobody likes discrimination, do they? Now, I've got my headphone in, and we're going to listen to what she has to say, watch her reaction. A bit like Gogglebox, someone watching something, because that's entertainment. We love it. Anyway, let's get into it.
A beautiful day in Morrison, Colorado, as we get ready for the 6th annual Strong Woman competition. Miss Woman, do you feel ready?
Oh yeah, I'm ready, David.
This is the first year that a trans woman is in the competition. How do you feel about that?
Amazing. I feel honored to be a part of history. I have a lot of incredible trans friends who are athletes, and so we're all inspired this woman's competing.
Miss Swanson, how does it feel to be competing today?
I can't tell you how free I feel now that I've started identifying as a woman. I'm ready to smash the other girls.
And is it correct you just started identifying as female 2 weeks ago?
I'm not here to talk about my transition. I'm here to kick some fucking ass.
Any words for the challenger, Miss Woman?
Good luck, Heather.
Luck is for dudes. Look at it. It's mine. I'm the best.
Alright, can you see now why I got so much backlash? Because I think it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty obvious why people are mad about that. This isn't even the worst scene. We have so much, it gets so much worse. But anyways.
I'm sure it does get a lot worse. And I haven't watched the full episode myself, but I think I need to inspect it to see what's going on.
I do already have a video on trans athletes. You know, I talk about the science behind HRT, you know.
Science, she knows her stuff. We should listen to her because she knows the stuff.
The effects that HRT has on, you know, the benefits that people that are born assigned male at birth have. I also talk about how competition between trans women and cisgender women is actually like completely fair under certain circumstances.
She is correct.
Of course they chose powerlifting, like the most controversial of all of like the sports that trans athletes are in. Which first of all, USA powerlifting does not even allow trans women to compete. So like just the fact that she's allowed to compete is not accurate, but we'll let it slide. We'll let it slide.
You should definitely let it slide because this was said 2 years ago and no one can tell what's going to happen or what's around the corner. At the time, this was very discriminatory to use one extreme and say trans people shouldn't be involved in this sport, especially the most vigorous sport, the strongest sport, where men would obviously, well, not obviously, but would probably be more likely to be the strongest in a situation, depending on the person. Who was to know that they were gonna lift the ban from powerlifting in 2023, 2 years ago? It's just too impossible to predict. Now, I'd like to show you what's great about having trans women in women's sports. What we should call it is women in women's sports, because trans women are women. This trans women isn't trans women, it's just women. So I'd like to show you some of the newbies who've entered our sports and what they've done and what they've achieved for women. Now this is a UFC fight. I don't mind a little bit of UFC. Here we go. See, she's fairly similar in size. She's not clearly bigger than her opponents. And she just knees her in the head. Fantastic. Just like that, knockout, 39 seconds. That's got to be a world record. And who doesn't like to see women kneeing each other or slapping each other in the face? I wouldn't mind giving some of these people from South Park a slap. Bigots. We have trans swimmer Leah Thomas, nominated for the NCAA Women of the Year in 2022. Another fabulous achievement for women's sports. And if you're not familiar with who Leah Thomas is, well, she's this beautiful soul, and she was also discriminated against by Riley Gaines, who I know Trump likes, and has had her up on stage, and she is saying, this is one of the most discriminatory things I've ever read. Trans battle in sports is erasure of what a woman is. ex-Kentucky, because she's from the South. Yeehaw! And we know she's obviously a Republican because she's from Kentucky. And if you're white, cis, Republican, right-winged, fascist, bigoted, transphobic, sexist, misogynist from Kentucky, well, your opinion is invalid because all the things I've just labelled you are the truth. And no one could take that away from me or any other person within the trans community. We also have a female basketball player here competing. Fabulous height. She's got great build on her. She's obviously going to smash the other opponents and do great things for the girls team here. I'm not sure if this is high school, but clearly she has done a few years at high school, but still 42 on her shirt. Nothing to do with her age, more like 24. And we have here, someone check her ID from Trump's nephew. And I'm sure you're probably related to the Kentucky girl because you're Republican and they all breed into breeds and create little mini racists running around being discriminatory against trans women who are women. Now, I'd like to show you someone who I think is stunning and brave and all the above, who's just come out as a trans body lifter. And she has some really interesting words to say, and I want you to pay attention. Here we go.
They said being a biological male would give me an unfair competitive advantage over other women. Not even true. There is no difference between men and women.
There is no difference between men and women, and especially trans women, because trans women are women. Do we get it yet? It's a silly question. Are trans women women? Yes. Was it even a question? No.
Then why do you think powerlifting has separate categories for men and women?
It feels like you're being a bigot right now.
Agreed. As a bigoted question, a leading question, that obviously it's like asking, what is a woman? Well, someone who identifies as a woman. It's very simple to understand.
Like, they think that men are stronger than women, and that's just misogyny. To prove to you that being a biological male doesn't give me a competitive advantage, just consider this. The women's world record for bench press is 457 pounds. The men's world record is over 1,100 pounds.
Half.
And that's hardly any difference.
It's hardly any difference. I don't think anyone understands. It's like having one mug and then putting another mug on top. Here, and then another one on top. Not much difference. People like to say science only when it favours them in an argument. It's like being back at school.
Hey, USA Powerlifting, suck my d.
Now, our final words here today is of JC Cooper and how she helped push women's sport to a next level.
Everyone deserves to have the community and support that's offered through sports. Everyone should be able to compete at the highest levels possible. As a trans person, having your body politicized and demonized so much on a daily basis, to really be in your body and getting the endorphins from moving mass, moving weight, it's kind of like a priceless feeling.
You go, girl.
I am a lifelong sport enthusiast. I follow as many sports as I can. I can't get enough. And I am a sister, a friend, and a neighbor. But most of all, I'm just human. Trans athletes are some of the most monitored and exposed and vulnerable athletes that are out there. We go through so many hoops just to be able to participate, and then once we're there, we often face discrimination. In 2018, I applied to compete at 2 state competitions in the USA Powerlifting Federation. I was denied access to both of those competitions, and when I sought participation in another organization, 4 days after I competed, USA Powerlifting adopted a new rule categorically banning all trans athletes.
Discrimination.
that's when I decided.
What's that say? Black and brown, queer and trans lives matter. They do. And remember, black and brown, this is another conversation, black and brown are two different things. That's like saying yellow and white are the same. White is any cis person who agrees with any right-wing agendas, and yellow is usually Asian. And we love Asians and no Asian hate. So it's a bit like that. Black is deep Africa and brown is those who come here or to your country and have a mixy mix and is more diverse than any cis white person could ever be. And this is another thought. White lives matter hijacked Black lives matter, but when it comes to queer and trans, I think there's similarities between skin colour and what you think you are or who you think you could be, even if it's confusing to most people. When it comes to picking your gender, it's very similar to picking your skin colour. You don't have a choice. You're born with it, and then when you tell people, this is me, and they reject you for who you are, who you identify as, well, they're discriminatory and clearly transphobic and racist against you.
To seek legal aid and found gender justice and pursued
Gender justice.
a charge
Fabulous.
and complaint with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. We have rights too, and that needs to be respected and recognized, because without human rights in sports, then who is it really for? I was no longer able to share the same goals and aspirations as my peers or my teammates. And I watched them, compete at the meet that I was supposed to compete at, and celebrate together. And I never even got a chance, No one should have to experience that kind of isolation and othering.
Nobody.
And discrimination. And the entire time that trans people have been allowed to compete in sports, in the Olympics, no single trans person has ever dominated any sport. Ever. There is no evidence of this anywhere.
There is no evidence whatsoever. There's been no evidence in swimming, there's been no evidence in UFC, there's been no evidence in Olympic sports, sprinting, there's been no evidence in BMXing, there's been no evidence in cycling, there's been no evidence in snooker, there's been no evidence in darts, there's been no evidence in volleyball. The list goes on. I can name every sport and there's been no evidence. And if at any minute you think they're being discriminatory, don't read it. Put it away and look at happy things. I hope one day that I can reach the goal that Samantha Lux has reached by putting out the right message to everyone to know that trans women or women are not taking over sports and they will never dominate the sport. And anything you say against this is most definitely transphobic. Now, if you like sports, leave me a like. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of me talking to you about what the world is going on. Because we can't keep up with all this discrimination, all the racists, all the sexists, all the transphobics out there who seem to just open their mouth and shit comes out of it.
Save the world.